All right. Great. So today is day 9, and yeah, we're still doing basic stuff. So I want to go over the question I solved yesterday. There was, I couldn't, finish this question, because I was stuck at some point, and I didn't want to look at the solution either, because I know I'm on the right track to actually get a solution, right? So today I'm going to attempt once again the sub rectangle queries question. It's a medium question on Leet Code, so yeah, I'm going to give it a try, and I'll carry on from where I stopped yesterday. So here we have the sub rectangle queries. Here I will clear this out and try and solve it again. All right. Okay, I can clear it out without removing this part. So let me see. I just want to keep the question, yeah, the given data. Okay. Here, right. Then this one. Okay. Let me read the question again. The question says, implement the class sub rectangle queries, which receives a row by column rectangle as a matrix, right? So a row by column rectangle as a matrix of integers in the constructor, and supports two method. Update sub rectangle method, which takes row 1 integer, column 1 which is also an integer, row 2, column 2, both are integers, and a value. Now, update substring method updates all value with the new value in the sub rectangles whose upper left coordinate is row 1 column 1, and bottom right coordinate is row 2 column 2. So this is what this method does. This method updates sub rectangle method updates all values with new value, right? All values in the sub rectangle whose upper left coordinate is row 1 column 1, and bottom right coordinate is row 2 column 2, right? So get value, right, is another method that takes a row and a column and returns the value for those. Now return the current value of the coordinates, right, which is what get value method does. So get value method returns the value of the coordinates from the rectangle, right? So here's an example. So this is an input. It's just creating an instance of the sub rectangle queries, getting a value, updates the rectangle. You can perform as many operations as you want. So here we are inserting the rectangle, which corresponds to this first method here, right? This is our rectangle. This is the value that we want to get, and then here we have an update. We get another value from here, another value from here again. We get an update, another value, right? So yeah, now this question is kind of, you know it has more to it than just being a rectangle question, right? Because the rectangle now is not just a normal rectangle, it's a rectangle of how do you call it, a rectangle represented as a matrix, right? So here's what we're going to do. Yesterday I first of all I tried to create like a visual form of what the rectangle would look like, right? So here is an input that we are inputting into sub rectangle queries. So the matrix is something like this. I'll just come here, I'll put the first value here, right? So the first value is, let me just go this way. So a matrix is an array with different arrays inside, basically a 2D array, right? So a matrix can also be represented like this in a mathematical form. We can have matrix like this. So we can have 3, 1, 2, and then another one on the next line. Sorry, we can have another one like this. We have 4, 5, 6, and then so on. So you have this like invisible gaps, right? So a matrix is basically values arranged in columns and rows, right? So if we can represent this value that we've been given in form of columns and rows, then we can, you know, begin to see a pattern of how the triangle actually looks. Now here is what we have. We know that each array within the main input, right, within these whole things from this side all the way to this place, has 3 items in it. So we can just easily represent that. So in a matrix form, we can have something like this. We have let me use this color. We have 1, 2, 1. Let me space it a little. 1, 2, 1, right? And then we have 4, 3, 4, okay? And then we have 3, 2, 1, and then we have 1, 1, 1. We know a rectangle looks something like this, right? It has a longer length than width. So let's create a rectangle out of this. So we go all the way here. Sorry, let me go this way. We go from here all the way to this point, right? Then from here all the way to this point, and then we have another point here. Let me just do it this way. I'll go this way, right? And then all the way to the bottom, then go all the way across, and then all the way to the top, like this. Now we can see that we have a rectangle in it, right? So this, our rectangle has, this is 1 here. Here we have 2. This is another value here, 1. Another value here, which is 4. I'll just write 4 here. 3 is here, although we are not talking about 3 yet. And our rectangle came all the way to this 1, and then 1, and then we have another 1 here. So these are the different points on the main rectangle. Now when you look at this, right, you can see, you begin to see that we can have multiple rectangles from this rectangle. If we connect this 4 from here to all the way here and go this way, right, and go this way and come back, this is another rectangle, which is why the question is called a sub-rectangle problem, right? Sub-rectangle query. So you can query this rectangle from this point 1 all the way to point 4 here by going through every other point within it, right? And that's the same thing that applies to this part here. So we have another rectangle from here to this point here, from here to this side, and then all the way up here. That's another rectangle. And then let's do another one again. So this also is another rectangle, right? So we want to implement a class that first of all creates the rectangle, right? And then we want to create another class that updates specific sub rectangle from the entire rectangle. It could be any rectangle from here. This too is also a rectangle from this point all the way down, and so on. So we have so many rectangles, sub rectangles in the main rectangle, right? So now how do we get how do we update the value of a sub rectangle, right? A sub rectangle would be a rectangle that starts that has a row value, right? So from here to here, and a column value, right? Sorry, from here to this side is one row. From here to this side is one column. From here to this side is another column. So we have two columns in this rectangle, right? And every other sub rectangle here. Sorry, we have 3 points and two columns. Yeah, so this is one column, this is another column, but we have two, 1 2 3 points on every rectangle and sub rectangle in this problem here. Okay, now what's the next thing to do? Well, we want to be able to update the values, right? Now if you look at the first example, right, or when you look at this first example, we started from, we looked at, so the sub rectangle update sub rectangle method takes 5, yeah, it takes 5 parameters, right? So we passed it in um 0 1 3, right? This 0 1 3 2 5. Now what does 0 represent? 0 represents row 1, right? And 3 represents row 2, and then 0 represents, this 0 in the middle here represents column 1, and the other 2 here represent column 2, and we want to represent the values at these positions, right, by 5, right? So let's say row 1 here, right? Row 1, row 2, and then column 1, row 1, row 3, column 1, column 2, right? So column 0, sorry, 0, row 0 up to row 3, and then row 0 up to row 2, right? So we want to update the values at that particular position. Now what will happen? So let's first of all visualize this first. 0 0 3 2 5. So I'll write it here. I'll write let me erase this. I'll say this is values. I'll call this an update, right? Update. And this will be 0 0, sorry, 0 0 3 2 5, 0 0 3 2 5. So these are the values we want to update this particular rectangle with. I mean this value here at this point here, right? So from 0 to 3, from 0 to 2. Now how do we do that? How do we perform this operation? Well, if you look at it this way, right, we want to update from 0 to all the way to 3. What does 0 really represent, right? What does 0 really represent? 0 represents a value in the a position. Is like an index, right, from where we want to start updating this rectangle from, right? It's like a position. So 0 could be here, right? 0 could be at this point here. 0 could be so this first 0 is a starting point, right, in our rectangle, in the sub rectangle. So we can start anywhere. So 0 could represent, so here this entire array is one row, right? This entire array is one row. So 0 means first, start from the first item in the rectangle itself, start from the first sub array. So we are starting from this point here. This is one row. And the second 0, what does the the second r, so let me just put r2 here and r1. This denotes the row 1 and row 2, right? So r1 is row 1, r2 is row 2. What is a row? A row is just these lines here, right? All these lines here, these are rows, right? So if we say we want 0, it means we want to start with the first row, right? So starting will be at this point here, which has the columns of 1, 2 and 1, right? Good. Now what does this 3 mean? This 3 means we want to update all okay, the reason why I said this row here is 0, because we start counting from 0, right? So we want to start from here. So this is 0 basically. So here means 3 here means all the way to the third element, right? So I'll just interpret it that way. So this 0, 1, 2 and 3, right? We are at this point here. Okay, this is 3. So we want to update all the rows in this column, in this rectangle, right? All the sub rectangles in this rectangle. Now we also want to know what these values mean, right? So this is called 1 and this one is called column 2. Now column 0, when the value of column is 0, right, we know that we are also starting from the first column, and each item in the sub arrays, right, represent a row. So this would be our first row, represent a column. This will be our first column, the first item in the first column, right? And then the second item, the first item in the first column, the second item in the first column, the third item in the first column, right? Now we want to start from 0 all the way to 2, right? So 0, 1 and 2, which is why when we passed in the value 5, it means we want to update every value within this so I'll represent r as the rows to update, right? Rows to update is equal to 0, 3, and columns to update will be 0, this column here, all the way to 2. So 0, 2, right? Now we can see that this basically means a range of values to update. Now in terms of rows, it means we want to replace every value on each line, right? Every value on each line, but each line here represents an array. So every value on each line will basically indicate will be indicated by this column here that we passed in our update method of the sub rectangle queries class. Okay, I think I get it now. So how do we update the values? Basically, we can loop through each item in the each item in the array first of all, which is our rectangle, right? And each item means a row, right? Each item means a row. And then we want to update the columns, and these are the column at row 1, the first column at row 1, the second column this means we are going to use a loop within a loop, right, to also look at this each of these values here, right? So we want to replace the values here. Let me go over it again and explain properly. I think I kind of get this question now. So here's what I'm going to do again. So I'll come back here and delete these ones here. You know what, let me just take this out, and then yep, so push this all the way back up. So here the question says, right, I'm going over again to explain this properly. Okay, this is how I understood this question. We have a class called subquery subrectangle queries, right? Subrectangle queries. Okay, already sub means something within another, right? And this is subrectangle queries, so which receives a row by column rectangle, right? A row by column, right? Rows. So this is not even a row, it is a rows by columns rectangle as a matrix, right? And here is what a matrix is in mathematics, right? Let me just come here and show you what a matrix is. In oh Christ, not this, please. A matrix in math. So it's a line of it's like, here it is, right? You can see that we have like this huge, a bigger, a longer one, right? Of a longer form of a square bracket, right? So here's what the question is saying, right? That the rectangle we provide into this subquery class here, right, is represented by columns, rows and columns as a matrix of integers in as a matrix of integers. So a matrix of integers represented in a rows by column form is what we want to instantiate our class with. So when we create an instance of this class, we want to provide it a value which is in the form of a matrix, and this is what a matrix is. Is it matrix or matrix? Okay, it is matrix. So this is what a matrix is. A matrix has these two most important characteristics. We have rows and column, right? So we'll have values going all the way here and other values going down here. At the end of the day, it looks like this, right? It looks like a grid but without the borders here, right? So that is what a matrix is. So we want to represent, the values, the inputs that we are passing into an instance of this class will be in the form of a matrix. And this was why I represented this the value that we passed into this example here in a matrix form. So I'm going to do that again, right? So we have one, sorry. So first of all, we are passing, okay, let me not do that. Let me represent the values first of all. I'll just go this way, right? I'll create a matrix and then I'll go from 1 to 1, right? And then we also have 4, 3, 4, okay? And then we have 3, 2, 1, and then we also have 1, sorry, we have 1, 1 and 1, right? So this already, without this, let me show you, without this, right, we can begin to see a shape forming here, right? It looks something like this. It looks already like a rectangle, right? A rectangle has shorter width than length, so we can see that we have more rows than columns, and this already gives us an image of a rectangle, right? So what I did is I went ahead and still use this value to create our actual rectangle. So I'm going to use a straight line, right, to represent this properly, right, and another one that goes all the way down, and another one that goes this way. Sorry, I wanted to create a proper rectangle. I would have written this out, but yeah. And another one like this. Okay, let me just put this one here. Good. This is not a perfect rectangle, but you can see that this side is longer than the other one. Or let me just delete this. I'll extend this a little. Let me see. So it looks longer. You know. Yeah. So we are here, and let me just add this to that. Okay. So here is our rectangle, and then we have points on this rectangle, right? I'll represent, I'll put every point here. This is 1, and we have another point in the middle, which is 2. We have another point here, which is another 1. Then we have 4 somewhere here. I'll put 4 somewhere here. Let me just come here. I'll put 4 here, and then 3 here, and then the rest is 1. So second row here will be 4. I'll have another point here. I'll represent this by 3. I have another point here. I'll represent this by 4 again. So here will be 3, 3, 2, and 1, right? And then we have 1, 1, 1. So now here is why the question is even called a sub-rectangle, right? If you look at this, right, if you look at these different points here, you can see they all form a rectangle within our main rectangle, like this, going all the way here. So I'll just do it this way. Oh my god, my hands, my hand is not straight, so I'll just do it this way. Now this is one rectangle that we can visualize from our main rectangle. We can also visualize another rectangle this way, right? So all of these rectangles are sub rectangles of our main rectangle, and then I'll just do this one like this. So I'm just going to represent just 3. Otherwise we can go from this side to here like this and go across, and we can also come from this side, or okay, we've done that side as well. And then yeah, I think that's all. So I'm not going to represent the last one. I just remove it, and we can see our sub rectangles within our main rectangle. Now here is the next problem, right? The next problem says update, right? Update sub rectangle. Now we want to update any of these rectangles here, any of these sub rectangles here. Here we have one sub rectangle, this another one, this another one, and the other one too is a sub rectangle, but we are just going to stick to these 3. Now the question wants us to write a method within our class that can update the sub rectangle, or any given rectangle actually. So what is a rectangle here? Well, a rectangle is represented by 3 points, right, on the vertical axis, right? On the vertical side we have 3 points. So let me take the first triangle. I'll have 1, 2, and 1, and on the horizontal part we have 4. We have 1 and 4, but then we also want to go the other way, which is the vertical way. So 3 and 4 here. So this is one rectangle that we've created, right? Now we want to update either this or any sub rectangle within our main rectangle, right? Now, how what does this really represent? Let's take a look at this question, this example here. We used a value of 0 0 and what, 0 0 3, right? To, let me just copy this, I'll place it here. Okay, so we want to update this rectangle. Here this represents, I'll put this like this. Here this represents row 1, right? This is column 1. Row 2, I'll just use R for row, or RW1, which is row 1. I don't think that even works, so I'll just put R1, which is row 1. R2, sorry, we use column 1, row 2, column 2, right? And here is the value we want to update. We want to update the rectangle with, which is 5, right? I'll just put value there. Now, what does this row 1 and row 2 mean? What do they represent, right? Well, here is a conclusion I came up with, right? If we want to update a rectangle, it means we want to update specific points on that particular rectangle, right? And a row is simply a line going across, right? A horizontal line. Now, if we are given R1, it means we want to start updating from any of these any of these points, right? R1 will basically represent the position, our starting point, right? So in the case where R1 is 0, it means we want to start updating. Let me use this color here. It means we want to start updating from this point here, right? This is one row. Okay, so it means we want to start updating from there. And I would like to target the rows first, because we want to know how much of the rectangles we want to update. So we want to update all the way to the third rectangle, right? So we have 1 2 3. So third rectangle, basically 4 rows, right? So we want to start counting from 0. So we want to update this row. We want to update this. We want to update this row, this row, this row, and this row, right? So those are the 3 from here. So basically this is a range from 0 all the way to 3, right? This is a range. So we want to hold on, what am I saying? Yeah, so from 0 all the way to 3, we want to represent. So we can even represent this with a range, right? So 0 all the way to 3. Yes. So we use this as a computer language. So 3 will basically mean 2 plus 1, or no, 3 will basically mean 4 in our normal, because we have 4 rows here. In a normal human language, it will be 4. Then for columns, so we want to start from the first column. Our first column will be this line going all the way here, this second line here as well, and this third line all the way here, right? So we will also want to do that same thing again. This is 0, this is, sorry, this is 1 and 2 column, right? 1 and 2 column, but we want to read the lines right in front of each one of them. So we'll start counting from 0, right, which is this 0 here, and then we'll see 2 sorry, 0 1 and 2, right? So these 2 will be here. So yeah, and every point that appear in these lines that we drawn here, I will just represent the rows line here again. I will extend them so that we can see them properly. So every lines that appear to be extended is the every point at that particular line will be updated to a certain value. So I'll represent this back by 1, and we also have another one here, and we have another one here as well. So when we want to replace the values with 5, then we can just look into our extended lines. Here this point appears in the extended line, so we replace this by 5. This will be 5, and this point also is in the extended one. This is 5 again. This is another 5, and yeah, so anywhere that there is so we replace this by 5, we replace this by 5, we replace this by 5, 5, 5, 5, and 5, right? So that's it. That's how we're going to update these values, right? And we also want to do something interesting. We also want to do something interesting. Um, so after updating the values, right, we want to be able to get a particular, um, s- rectangle, right? So let's say, for instance, we want 0, 2, and that function is what? Get value. Okay, we want to get a value of a particular uh rectangle, basically a point, right? That would be a point. So here's how it will look. I'm coming. So let's say we want to get a point at 3 and 1. What does 3 represent? When we come back here, 3 represents the row at which we want to select this the row at which we want to get these points, and then from which column. So if we had, so to get the value, this particular 5 here, right, this particular 5 here will be what? Row 1, because we provide the row first. So it will be row 0, right? Row at 0, and then which column? 0. So the value here will be 5. And this, I believe, is how we are going to solve this question. Yeah. Let me check the chat. Chat. Yeah, I think that is it. I don't know why I'm so sleepy. Oh God. Okay. Let's see how we can solve this in code. So what I would do is to replace these values. I'll just get the first one. So a range from the first R1 up the way to this one plus 1. We want to do plus 1 so that we can get this actual value here. And yeah, the same thing for the column. So the column will be an inner loop, right? We want to loop, we want to run a loop within another. So yeah, that's what the columns will represent, I believe. So let's try it out. I'm trying to check if my stream is still going on, so that I don't stop in the middle. All right, I think it is going well. Yep, the stream is going well. Okay. Right, let's solve this in code. So I mean, there are no edge cases, right? Let's look at this. Well, these are the constraints where there will be at most 500 operations. Okay. Considering both methods, so update subrectangle and get values. Get value, sorry. Get value. So the column and row values will be um between 1 and 100, right? Or let's say between 0 and 101. yeah, and then the length of the rows, right? The exactly the length of the rows is equal to, I mean rows is equal to the length of the rectangle. So yes, here's what I said. So this is one row. This here is one row. This here is another row. That's two. This here is three. This here is four. So the length of our sub rectangle, I mean the length of the rectangle we are passing into this sub rectangle here is going to be how many? Four. Four. Yeah, that is what this constraint says. And this one here says rectangle I dot length. Yeah. So every value in the every value in the sub array here represents the column. Yeah, I didn't even read this, and yeah, that is actually how we're going to do it. So let's start. Um, so I'm going to copy this and put it in. Um, I'm going to put this in my code editor here. This is still an array question, so I'll just put it here. I've been saying I will upload this thing on GitHub so that others can get the files, but I don't know why I keep forgetting. I'll do it here and today. So sub dash rectangle dash queries. Hold on. I'll just put queries here. All right. I'll paste this here. Import this class first of all. From typing, get typing. Let me instantiate. Let me create new git version control. I'll use the terminal, but I want to use this git bash. Okay, so I'll say git init, right? Git add. Okay, let me create a new repository for that. You know what? Git init is okay. Let's keep it that way. When I'm done solving the question, I will do it. So we want to first of all accept some values here. We want to pass in some values into our rectangle, into our this is the constructor function, right? So when you see init, when you instantiate this class, right, to be able to get any other values from the class, right, this function actually accepts a parameter passed to it, right? Sorry, accepts an argument, and then within your class we need to also store that argument that was passed to it. Otherwise we can't just instantiate. So here's what I was doing before. I could instantiate this function, like this class, like this, without passing in a value, right? But in the case where we have a value within the init, or the init function present with some parameters in it, then some parameters inside, then it means we can't instantiate this class without actually passing in the valid values. And in this case we want to pass in a list of lists, right? An array of arrays. So how do we set this store this list that we passed it to this class here in our class? How do we store the list? Well, one thing I would do is I'll just call this you know what, let me do it this way. I'll just call this a rec. Sorry. So to store, okay, let's just do a bit of OP here. I'll say rect, right, which means rectangle, and say it's equal to, so to get these values here, I'll just say is equal to rectangle like this, right? Now let's look at something quickly. I'll just put a pass here, and another pass here. Okay, so the pass basically means ignore the functions. What the error we're seeing before was telling us that this function is supposed to have a block, right? A block of values in it. But pass will basically ignore those values. So yeah, this is a bit of OP class. So don't be mad. I think I want to do it this way. I'll say solution is equal to sub rectangle queries, right? I'll do it this way. Now you can see it is asking us to put in an array of arrays. So I'll copy the values that I had before, which is here. Sorry. So I'll copy these and put it inside. Yeah. So we are good. Now let's try and access the rectangle we just created, right? So let's print it out and look at it. So I'll do this. I'll say print solution, right? Now to access a particular member of a class, be it a property or a function, right? You use the dot notation. Now you can see that we have get value and update sub rectangle, but we don't have, you know, the rectangle itself, right? We don't have it. But let's say we want to create a method that just returns the rectangle for us. So I'll just say update def rectangle gets, right? This rectangle gets doesn't take any value, but it should always return the value of our sorry, I just removed it here. It should always return the value of our rectangle. So I'll just say rectangle return return rect. Now you can see it says rect does not exist. So you know this is just a self issue, so don't worry. Self means, and you know, self refers to the current class here. So everything within this class, self will be able to access, right? Now I say return rect, but it's not. Now it's okay. Let me see. It says rect does not exist, right? Unresolved reference. Like, what am I referring to? So here is what we need to do instead. So in order for us to get the value of rect, we need to do self dot rect, right? And hold on, self dot rect. Now if I say return self self dot, then I'll be able to get the rect, right? I'll be able to get the rect, and then even though I don't pass any value, I can just rect get here, and then it will return our rectangle for us. Now you can see this is our rectangle with all the columns in it. Okay, so now we've learned a little bit of OOP. Why am I saying it like that? But anyway, so this is what our rectangle will represent, right? I'll just delete this. That was a bit of fresher for me myself. Yeah, so we want to loop through our rows, right? So what do the rows represent? The rows are basically row 1 and row 2, right? So let's say for I in, you know, range, so we want to start from the first row, right? Range will always start from a first value, right? It can be anything you want to, if you provide a single value, the range will start from 0 up to the number -1, right? But we don't want that. So here's what we're going to do. We want to provide the first value, row 1, and then we want to provide the second value, which is where how many rows we want to update, right? So where we want to stop, we want to provide row 2. But mind you, row 2, if row 2 was 3, right, then range will stop at 2, which is 3 minus 1. So we want to reach exactly 3 rows, right, which is in, in human words 4, right? In computer words, it's just reducing it by 1, right? So let's just say row 2 plus 1. This way, when we pass row 2 as 3, our loop will run up to the third element in the the third element, counting from 0. So now we want another loop again. So we want to loop through the columns. So I will do for j in what? In range, right? In range, so for the columns, right, we also want to do the same thing basically. But hold on, for the columns, right, we want we are also doing the same thing, because we'll be passed, let's say when we pass in, okay, I'm coming, let me copy this quickly. So this is a 4 by 3. Let's see where's get value, this get value, update value. So we want to update with this. I'll just copy this here. So this is column 0, right? So we want to start from column 1 all the way to what? If we pass in column 2, then it will reach the value. So column 2 in this case here is 2, right? So it will go all the way to 1. So it will do 0, 1, and it will not reach the third one, which is what 2 represents here. So we want to do what? We want to do plus 1. So in this case, this will be 3, meaning it will stop at 2, right? So great. And we want to update these values now. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to update these values by doing this. So we want to is the question, does the question want us to return the value? I don't know. So here is what we are going to do. So update. Okay, so we are just updating, right? So we'll update the value at each point, right? So column 1, right? Column 1, row 1. So we are on row 1 in the first iteration, and in the this sub loop here will start from whatever this column 1 value is, right? And then column 2 value will be later on. So here's what we are going to do. So we are saying so we want to update our rectangle, right? That is what we are doing. So self.rect, right? Self.rect at which value? We want to start from from I, which is the row 1, right? Instead of representing this by I, right, I'll just put row, right? From row, let me just replace this by row, right? Row, and so that it is easier to understand. So I'll say column, right? Column, and then put, so we want column here, and then we'll just replace the value by the new value that we get from here. So here is what this function would do for us. Then we want to get a particular value, right? We want to get a particular row and column. So here's what I would do. Let's look at the example. I'll say get what? Get 0, 2. Okay, it will return a particular value. Okay, good. So here's what this will do. I'll just say this will return return rectangle self dot rectangle at this row, and then this column here, sorry, this column here. And that's about it. So let's first of all update solution dot update sub rectangle, and I want to update I will still use these values here, 0 0, right? And then I'll just update it by 7, right? And then I want to print the rows to see how it looks. So print print solution dot rectangle. Let's see what this does. Hopefully, I don't know why my heart is beating. Anyway, yes, so you can see we replaced all the values with 7. Yeah, that's about it. That's about it, really. So let's see getting the value. So let's get a value before updating the rectangle. So I want to get a value at here. What does this say? We are getting a value at 0 and 2. So 0 and 2. So 0 will be, so we have 0 is first row, right? And 2 will be 1. So if our solution actually works, we should get 1 as the value. So here we'll do solution dot get value. Okay, I copied get value already, so I'll just paste it here. Get value here like this. And I said our value should be what? Should be 1. So there's no, our value should be, yes, should be 1. So we are starting from 0, 1, and 2. So let's see. Yeah, so we have 1 as our value. Okay, so I've tested this out. Let's see if it actually works on LeetCode. I'm not sure. Am I supposed to return a value from this? Let's see what's happening here. Yeah, this is none, so we are not returning any value. Okay, that's good. So let's copy this, and I'll use this as my solution. Come here, and this is the first medium question I'm solving live. So hopefully I'll get this right. Even yesterday I started solving it, but I couldn't finish. I was really stuck. And while I was away, let's just run this. Interesting. It worked. It did work. So for the way this question is, I think it is, let me submit it first and see if this actually works. I can pass the test and fail the submission. Oh, okay. Wow, 68%. That is a huge leap. That's a, an improvement. 68%. Yesterday I got less than this on a solution I wrote. But yeah, this is relieving, and given the fact that I actually understand what the question is asking, yeah, it's a big relief. Nice. So here's the solution, and I'll push this to GitHub so that I'll leave a link if anyone wants to see it. They can access the link to see the solution. I'll come back here to the terminal. I'll say, let me just create the repository. So the main topic of the day is stacks. So I'm going to learn about stacks. Let me just Google it down here so I just know that I'm not going to forget. So we have stacks, data structures. Yeah, stack data structures. All right, so let me quickly share these my solutions on GitHub. Um, I'll just go to git dot. I don't want anybody to see. I don't want to do it live here, so I'll just create the GitHub repository behind the scenes, right? And so DSA journey sync commit. So quickly come here and get to this place here. Okay, so create new repository. I'll call this 100 days dash days. Okay, 100 days dash DSA. So I'll just use my template here to do that. I'll just use the broadcast template. I'll say 100 days of studying data structures and algorithm. Right, let me just copy the title here. 100 days of studying data structures and algorithm, and I'll put it back here. So it's going to be a public repository, so yeah, this is it. So I've created it here. So let me just do the point it to this remote repository here. I'll just do copy this. I'll say git let me see, let me copy this one here. Git remote, oh god, remote add origin, and then I'll use this as my origin. Why is it not coming up? Is this? Then I'll do git add again just to be sure. Yep. Then git commit dash m DSA arrays and strings, right? And strings. Then I'll put day 1 to 8. Okay, then let me just do git push, git push origin main. Okay, so I'll just get this here. Let me just close this and refresh this so we see. Okay, I don't know why this idea folder was still included. This is pretty bad. What happens when I delete it? Right. I actually ignored. This is why I don't like. What's the name? Idea. Yeah. Should have ignored this a long time ago. Anyway, can I delete this? Can I delete it? I'll do that later. But let's carry on with what is important today. So I'll put this in my description. Um, I'll just put it here. Repo repository here. All right. I will now save this. Oh, that wasn't it. Yeah. Okay. So the repository is there. I've updated it. So nice. Now let's carry on with the next thing, which is stacks. So I'm going to learn about stacks, and we are going to try to solve some simple questions, at least just the basic stuff about Slack for today. Stacks, sorry, I said Slack. Uh, okay, so Slack is a linear data structure that follows a particular order in which the operations, let me see if I can increase this. How does this look on my screen? Well, not that good. Okay, I think this is better. So this is not an ad. So in which operations are performed, right? So it's a linear data structure that follows a particular order. Now order means, a sequence of items. um let's not get ahead. So the order may be LIFO, which is last in first out, or FILO, which is first in last out. LIFO implies that element that is inserted last comes out first, and FILO implies that elements that is inserted that the element the element that is inserted first comes out last. So FILO, last in first out, first in last out. Good. What is stack data structure with these are the different sections here. So I'm going to learn about stack. A stack is a linear data structure that blah 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 blah. It behaves like a stack of plates where the last plate added is the first place that is removed. That is very true. In the kitchen room, when like that. So when you it's like a deck of cards, right? So when you put, or even books, when you put books in a certain order, one on top of the other, you get to remove the first one first, although it was the last one you added on the table. So yeah, that is true. And so there are basic operations of a stack data structure. So push adds an element to the top of the stack. Okay. Pop removes. These are functions now. These are functions. Uh, you know, these are functions of built-in functions that operate on arrays. But let's continue. So pop removes the top element from the stack. Pick returns the top element without removing it. Okay. Is empty checks if the stack is empty. Is full checks if the stack is full. How do we know? Okay, in case of a fixed size arrays. So stacks are basically arrays that we perform this kind of operations on. Makes sense, makes sense. Now application of stack data structures is in recursion, expression, evaluation and parsing, depth first search, undo and redo operations, browser history. Okay, at Wow. So undo and redo operations use stack. Oh wait, I did not know that. Wait, let's say here now, right? I type something like this, right? If I press Control Z, I'm undoing it, right? So whatever I typed here was added to a stack, or the action of typing something was added to a stack. So when I undo this, it removes it, right? But how is the computer able to remember that I did something? When I press Control Y, it puts it back, so it was on a stack. This makes sense. I like it. Well, well, well. Ha ha ha. Let's see where we are going with this. I'll just give myself another. Oh my god, they've taken the light. They have taken the lights. And where's my phone? Jeez. They've taken the lights. Oh god, Nigeria. I'm so sorry. This is painful. Who is that? Rosie, I'm coming. I'm doing something. You need torchlight.